Okay, hello everybody. This is a Liberty Topstring tutorial. Circumstances are we have a STX Surgeon 1K, that's a Surgeon 1K, and we have a piece of Hero 3. This is going to be, like I said, a Liberty Topstring tutorial on a 9-diamond top string on a 7-hole scoop. Okay, to begin, at least for me, the way that I do it, I am always, if I'm just doing a Liberty top string, I'm almost always starting from the second hole. So I'm going to use 2 holes as far as tying off and everything like that. So outside in, through the side, front to back through the mesh. Remember, I'm always stringing so the rough side of the mesh is on the ball. Also, this is a 10-diamond piece of mesh. I've folded over 2 rows of the mesh itself. So there's the 9-diamond row, which is the closest to me right now, which is obviously the closest to the scoop, and then there's a 10-diamond row below that. They're folded over. Okay, so I've gone outside in, front to back. I'm going to do that outside in, front to back one more time. I haven't tightened that yet. I will in a moment. I'm going outside in one more time, and then inside out through hole number 1. So this has not been tightened yet. I will do that in 1 second when I rearrange the actual stick. So just so you can see that right there, change the stick. Oh, let's make sure I get this better in frame. All right. So I'm going to loosen this over here just a little bit. Loosen the scoop. I want to make sure that the mesh sits right where I want it to sit. Then I'm pulling super tight with my left hand. I'm pulling tight with my right. Got to make sure everything is tight always. So depending on the situation, obviously I'm stringing in that direction first. Now because I have where I start my where I go through. Obviously this is similar to my Jedi top string. This is a shifted top string that I do for my Liberties. Now, what hole I will go through depends on how many holes I have in the mesh. What hole of the mesh I go through here, of the shifted variation, depends on how many holes I have here in the scoop. If this was a 6-diamond, if I was a 9-diamond piece of mesh and 6 holes in the scoop, I would actually go through this hole right here, which is the closest to the actual, which is obviously almost basically abutting the actual part of the tie off for the top string. But I do not have to do that because it is a 7-hole scoop. So let's see. I'm going to go folding it over a little bit in hole number 1, going in that. I'm counting in that way. So there's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. I'm effectively going to be using, obviously I'm using all 9 holes, but you'll see kind of how this goes. So starting in hole number 1, I'm going back to front through that little hole you see right there, front to back through the plastic. So I'm always good, like of all these holes going in that direction, I'm going to be on that side of this hole. So there's these 2 holes right here. If I'm going in that direction, I'm going the furthest of those 2 holes. I'm not going to say right or left because this whole video might get flipped upside down. So hopefully that makes sense. So back to front through the mesh, front to back through the plastic. Make sure it doesn't get all caught up. And obviously I'm going to keep everything loose until I wrap over on this side over here. So skip that one. Back to front to 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 back, and then one. You see, I've used all of the holes here in the scoop. I have 2 holes of mesh left. That is by design. I'm going back to front one more time, and now I'm going to go inside out. Hole number 1 over here on this side. Okay, so I'm just kind of making sure that the mesh is still folded. The holes that should be folded over on one another are. And now I'm going to go. I'm still working on the 9-diamond row right here. Hopefully you can see that. I'm going inside out. Sorry, that's in the way. So inside out on hole number 2 in the sidewall plastic, front to back through the mesh. I'm so sorry. We're going to back that up. I'm going outside in through hole number 2 in the plastic, front to back through hole number 9 in the mesh, counting in the direction that we did before. Outside in, front to back, and one more outside in. So you can see it's looped twice, but instead of going through the mesh again, now I'm going inside out through hole number 1 in the plastic. And so now you see that I've gone through holes number 1 and 2 on the plastic on both sides and all the way over there. Now we keep everything. Now I tighten everything. It would be much more difficult to try and keep all of this tight on that first pass. So here we go. Just trying to make sure I keep everything tight. Now I need to kind of hold things as they go through and go along. I want to make sure everything gets tight, stays tight. Right now you can see I'm not wearing any, I'm not taping my fingers. That's because this is the first stick or first thing that I'm doing today. And my skin is still strong, you should say. If this was head number 7 or 8 or 9 or 10, I would absolutely be taped up so that I don't tear up my skin. And I have calluses, but regardless of whatever thickness of calluses that you have, if you aren't taped up or not wearing gloves or doing something like that, your hands are gonna get destroyed. So, and that's I've had people chirp me online and about you don't need to wear gloves. I need to wear gloves. I think if you're pulling string as tight as I keep everything, you're not going to be irresponsible, but you're not going to be able to use your hands very much. Okay, so everything is tight all the way over in this direction. You can see that I've gone through loop number 1. Now I'm tying off loop number 2 and making sure, whoops, please excuse me. Sorry about that. Making sure that is super tight. Now I can kind of just release my hands, and that will stay tight because of all the friction that's going on over here. Okay, now just going back in the opposite direction, doing the same thing. Hopefully you can see it a little bit better the way the mesh is kind of just sitting right now. I'm obviously going to be going through the holes that I didn't, going back in that direction. So now we're going 1, 2, 3, 4, all the way over in that direction. And because we're going in that direction, we're going on the hole on that side of, or the hole on this side of the mesh going in that direction. So back to front, front to back. Now obviously we are keeping everything relatively tight as we go. Well, not relatively tight, we're keeping everything tight as we go, but if I let go, it's not going to loosen up the same way that it would if the mesh was loose going back in the original direction. Back to front through the mesh, front to back through the hole. And so now I'm back to front through that one more. Now, in order to, before I tie everything off, I continue to make everything tight. It's even and tight going in both directions. So now I've got, as you can see here, hopefully I can change the angle of this so it's a little bit better. So I've got this, thankfully in the Surgeon, this hole number 1 is a nice big hole, and there's enough of a gap right in there that I can get the string through when I need to. Let's see if I can try and get all of that in the shot at once. Okay, excellent. All right, so I want to double loop through hole number 1 on the plastic in the same way that I've done it through here. It'll look like there's, you know, extra string, but I still want to, even though I'm not double looping the mesh in this case, I still want to double loop because I like double looping everything. So inside out through the plastic, it's basically back to front, but I'm not going through any mesh here. I'm not going through any mesh at all. I'm just double looping around the plastic all by itself. Inside out through the hole number 1, kind of pulling that tight right there. I could probably leave that. You know what? Let's, as an experiment now, I forget how many times I go through. Because in this case, I did already go through twice. So if you only go through, you go through it twice, and it just looks like that, that's enough. I realize as I'm doing this, because it never looks like that I've gone through technically 3 times now. That's just fine. The purpose of doing that, which I'll explain in a later video, still stands. So keeping, now that, pulling that tight there. Everything is super tight. These knots are just about as close to the plastic as I can make them, so that if anything does want to get loose at some point, it won't. Anyway, 9 diamond Liberty Topstring tutorial on a 7 diamond scoop. That's supposed to be a thumbs up. Let me know what you think. And as always, this works well for me. If you have any questions, please drop them in down below. Until next time, keep stringing.